Pitch Live. I'm Mike Calabrese. I'm joined today by Sean Zerillo and later in the episode, Grant Neiffer to give us his dinger card here on Monday. This is the Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast, and we are going to get into Sean's best bets, the rest of his card, and some totals as well that he has some leans on later in the episode. But I'd like to start with this, Sean, a question, and it has to do with one-run game variance. The Astros have won 68% of their one-run decisions this season. The Giants, meanwhile, in the NL lead the majors with 19 wins in one-run games. When you're evaluating a team and you're trying to put them into your own power rankings, how do these one-run decisions come into play? Is it something that you consider a team that is consistently delivering in the clutch, whether it's walk-off wins or saves in high, stress situations? Or do you think it's a little bit more fluky and over the course of the season it kind of returns to the major league average? Where do you come down on one-run games?
Yeah, I definitely lean towards the latter because of all the minutia that goes into that stat. Just think about all the scenarios that can create run games or not create one-run games. For instance, how many extra inning games are you winning by multiple runs or losing by multiple runs? Because in theory, that is a 50-50 coin flip game that got to extra innings and then variance happened from there. So I would almost file extra inning games under one-run games as well. Some of them may not end by one run, but also how many times is a team down 2 runs in the ninth and they don't send a runner from third on a sac fly because they're down 2 runs? That run's not worth anything. Why get the guy thrown out at the plate when they're down 2 runs anyway? That's a one-run game, right? Basically. How many times is a team, capable of pushing a runner on a stolen base attempt to second base and then getting a base hit to make it a one-run game in the ninth inning when they're down 2 runs? Again, not going to run with that runner on first base when you're down 2, when a home run could tie the game. But then the inverse effect of it. How many times does a team lose by 1 run as a result of getting defensive indifference in the ninth? Because they're up 2 runs. They get the defensive indifference to second base, and then a base hit cashes them in. And they still lose by 1 run. But really, they were down 2 runs, and then they got to defensive indifference play. So there's a lot of different scenarios that can either create or move away from one-run games that I do think are close to 50-50 coin flip games. The things that I'm more interested in watching throughout a season, just to reiterate, I do think it is more variance, and I do think it averages out over time. One example that I think is very strong for that is the Washington Nationals this season, who have one of the worst bullpens I've ever seen, and statistically, one of the worst bullpens in Major League history. The Nationals are 12-11 in one-run games. When the Nationals lose, they typically get blown out. They've also had multiple leads that they've held late that they end up getting blown out ultimately. So blowing leads late in the game, rescuing leads late in the game offensively, those are things that I like to look at in terms of evaluating team performance. I feel like teams who can put up big crooked numbers late in the game, either to come back on a team or to put you away when they already have a lead, are signs of championship contenders. You saw the Dodgers do that on Sunday, down 3-0. They put up 11 runs combined in the 7th and 8th innings, or I believe the 6th and 7th innings, to pull away in that game. And that's something that they typically do to people. I call it the Dodgers late blitz because it's very often 6th, 7th, 8th inning, the Dodgers will put up a crooked number on you, either to come back or put the game away. So obviously that does not factor into one-run games. But what I'm saying is teams who could put up big crooked innings, teams who answer leads back, or teams who come back from big deficits, or teams who are capable of putting teams away with big innings. I'd rather bet on teams or find teams who are capable of putting those big crooked numbers up in innings as opposed to teams who are capable of holding one-run leads. That said, I do think the Giants have a very good record in one-run league games this year. And you have to consider as well, the Giants are playing in Oracle Park where most of the totals are 7.5. And if the totals are going to be lower in your games, you're probably going to be playing more one-run games in general. There's just going to be more one-run games in Oracle Park than there are at Coors Field with a higher park factor in general. So Giants have an excellent bullpen, play in a park that is going to be low scoring in general. Yes, if the Giants have success in one-run games, that kind of makes sense with how their team is built and the park that they play in. But overall, in general, league-wide, I do think it's variance, and I think historical studies do show that there is very little year-over-year correlation in terms of winning one-run games. And that's why, we like to look at the standings at the end of the year and see if the results of every one-run game had been flipped, how these teams ultimately would have performed. But, in the same respect as the Nationals performing better than you'd expect in one-run games this year, the White Sox have been awful in one-run games the past 2 years. They're 4-20 this year. They were 13-29 in one-run games last season. So the White Sox 17-49 in one-run games over the past 2 years. That kind of does make sense with expectations, but also I think they have been a little unlucky. And I think if they, played a little bit more fair in those one-run games, they might have played up to expectations and closer to their preseason win totals a little bit.
Let's now turn to your best bet here on Monday, the Yanks and the Reds over 9.5. It's also bubbled up to 10 on the market. You can talk about price point and how you would play that. But let's look at the fact that the Yanks' offensive slump appears to be over. They had scored 7 runs across 7 games before scoring 23 runs in their last 4. Judge had a big game on Friday night, getting out of his slump. Certainly, if you're backing the Yankees in the spot or over, you want to see him do some damage at the dish. They're also drawing Lodolo, which leaves me to believe there's an opportunity to keep this turnaround offensively going. He's been banged around this month, giving up lots of long balls, and his hard hit percentage is also on the rise. If they can run him off by the 5th or 6th inning here, I certainly am with you on the over because they get a lackluster Cincinnati bullpen to attack. The Yankees, by the way, sending Alan Winans to the hill. He hasn't started a game or thrown a pitch this entire season, so let's start there. Any intel on him and his contributions to a potential over here?
Yeah, Winans has spot started for the Braves in recent years. He's 29 years old, though. Career ERA over 7. His FIP is right around 5. Only thrown 40 big league innings, but the stuff is way below major league average. 83 stuff plus, 78 pitching plus, a 4.76 body ERA. His expected ERA was north of 7 last year in a couple starts. It was 4.24 a couple of years ago. So I do think this is a replacement level starter, a guy who projects around a 5 ERA. As I said, the stuff plus does not grade out particularly well. Throws a changeup a ton, 31% career usage on his changeup, and it's absolutely gotten smashed. It was fine 2 years ago, 2.99 expected WOBA when he made his first 6 starts, but last year, a 4.14 expected WOBA. No pitch in his arsenal grades out better than an 88 stuff plus. So very replacement level arm, pitching in probably the worst venue outside of Coors Field for pitchers. Great American Ballpark increases home runs by about 28% on an average day, and today it is going to be particularly hot, not just in Cincinnati, but throughout the slate. We'll get to weather in other games. 95 degrees in Cincinnati today at first pitch, but on the field, it's going to feel like 102 degrees, slight wind blowing out. But ultimately, I didn't even adjust my park factor for this matchup. I kept it right around where Great American plays, which is about a 14% boost on a daily basis. And I made this total about 10.5. So over 10 to -110, I was able to grab a 9.5 juice last night. Yankees in their better split here against the southpaw pitcher. 127 WRC plus on the season. They're at 120 against righties with Judge, with Goldschmidt, their other right-handed bats. They do just hit a little bit better against left-handed pitching. The right-handed pitching, and as you mentioned, Mike, this Reds bullpen is very shaky. 24th in expected FIP and strikeout minus walk rate, and 23rd, 25th over the past 30 days. So no improvement in the recent Reds bullpen metrics. This number has moved up, but if you can get a 10 at -110, which is still available in the market, we'll go ahead and bet that and side with the line movement here overnight that moved it up from 9.5. So yeah, hopefully we get runs in Cincinnati today and runs throughout most of the slate because I'm on 3 overs and 1 under, which is not my typical split for betting totals.
Usually we feature your favorite underdog here, but with only 9 games on the slate, you didn't like any of them, so you're going to go with an under instead of an underdog between the Cubs and the Cardinals, sitting at 9 at -112 to about -120 on the market. Let's target an under for no other reason but the fact that we have Ben Brown and Matt Liberatore on the bumps for their respective teams. We've hit on some of these boomer bust pitchers throughout the season, and Liberatore fits that bill to a T. No one can hit his changeup. Batters are batting .091 when he throws it, but batters are teeing off on his fastball this season. So when he's ahead in the count, he's generating a lot of whiffs when he's able to use that, pitch as one that gets, a batter to chase. But in the month of May, his ERA was 2.97, being able to utilize that. Then he comes back this month, having to throw a lot more four-seamers, getting behind in the count, and he's been knocked around. He's given up 16 runs in a 3-stretch start recently. He's also facing another 25-year-old in Ben Brown, who's just on his 22nd start of his young career, and he's been equally up and down this season. 3 of his last 4 starts, he's given up 2 earned or less, but he's had 4 blow-up starts since late April, in which he's given up 6 or more. Unlike Liberatore, he wants to throw gas. He throws 95 miles an hour to set up that knuckle curve. All that table setting being said, when I saw this number and then I saw that you were on the under, seeing this pitching matchup, I'm going to go ahead and try to buy the variance and say if they're both clicking, why not play an alt under here? What do you think about it sitting at 7.5 at plus 150 if you go under?
Just makes me nervous with the weather. 96 degrees in St. Louis today. It's basically been the same all weekend. It was in the mid to upper 90s all weekend. Wind blowing out to left field as well. So pretty good hitting conditions does lead me to believe that this one could land on exactly 9. And I like the 9 as a potential push probability in a 5-4 game because both of these bullpens do rate below average. They're both well rested coming into this game, which is one of the reasons I like the over. Basically, both teams threw their two worst projected relievers in multi-inning stints, or at least to finish off their games on Sunday. So each team should have all of their high leverage relievers available today. The Cardinals ended up using Leahy and Graceffo yesterday. The Cubs used Chris Flexen and Nate Pearson. So I do think every top end, every higher end reliever is ready to go today. These are two of the best defensive teams in baseball, two of the top three defensive teams in my model. I have the Cubs first. I have the Cardinals third. The Cubs rate second by defensive run save this season. The Cardinals rank first by outs above average. The alternative metric for either team does not rate them as highly. The Cubs are ninth by OAA. The Cardinals are 19th by DRS. But as I said, they rate as two of the top three defensive teams in my model. Brewers are up there as well. The Braves are up there too, all in the top 5. So that definitely pushes me more towards the under. And even though the weather is warm and the wind is blowing out, Busch Stadium is still going to play around a league average park. That's basically how it played all weekend, despite the increased temperatures and the strong wind. Typically, this park is going to play about 8% below the league average run scoring environment. Today, over the weekend, it's going to play much closer to the major league average. But even that said, I still make this total 8.3. So under 9 to minus 120. If you can get an under 7.5, what's the number on the other under 7.5, Mike?
It was plus 150, plus 155, shopping
That's
around.
not bad. Yeah, anything over plus 150, I think I'd be okay with if you want to bet an alt, but I definitely like the 7 just given the wind and the weather today. And I should also mention this game triggered an Action Lab system for contrarian unders for winning teams. It's a 1 to 53.5% rate all time, a 4.3% ROI. Basically, if the public bet percentages are both the money and the bet percentages are north of 50% to the over, and the teams both have win rates higher than 50%, that's when this system triggers. So independent of my own projection, Action Labs contrarian unders for winning teams triggered as well. So only game that this system is active for today, the under streak system is active for the Rangers total, which we'll get to at the end of the show. But in terms of actual underdog value and teams who are getting close to range, because this is technically the underdog section, I just decided to go with my lone under for today. The Mets, I want plus 125. The Twins, I want plus 115. And the White Sox, I want plus 120. They're all about 5 cents away from where my price target would define actionability. So just wait on those 3 underdogs and maybe one will pop into range during the day.
Grant Neiffer getting his cuts in the on-deck circle. He's up next in his home run segment, but we're going to go through the rest of your card here, Sean. Arizona against the Chicago White Sox over 8.5. You also play that up to 9 at minus 108. Don't look now, but the White Sox have won 3 series in this month, and dare I say they can hit? Well, I think that's a bit of an overstatement, but as long as they're no longer a complete pushover at the dish, I think they can contribute to this over. They do draw Erod in this matchup, who was having a good month after getting drilled in May, but his overall numbers in terms of under the hood numbers this year still indicate that he's a pitcher who's going to be north of 5 or 6 runs in terms of his ERA. Also, a nice bottom of the barrel back-to-back for Arizona to get their confidence up. They go from the Rockies to the White Sox in 6 straight games. What are your thoughts on this pitching matchup and potentially the White Sox sticks to be able to contribute to an over here?
Yeah, if you filter the White Sox by season-long splits, last 30 days, last 2 weeks, they still rank in the bottom 10. Like, I watch the White Sox games. I feel like they've been hitting. Well, if you split them up lefty-righty, they absolutely mash left-handed pitching. 8th against lefties over the past 30 days, 116 WRC plus. Miguel Vargas has been the biggest driver of that. He's really broken out in May and June compared to April, 76 WRC plus in April, but he's been much better in May, 148 WRC plus, and then in June, a 115. He shaved about 7% off of his strikeout rate since last season, 7 to 8%. So Miguel Vargas is really kind of leading the charge, but they brought up other guys, Kyle Teal, Chase Mydroth, who are all hitting and contributing. And yeah, I mean, it looks like the White Sox, Edgar Caro, the White Sox young core, their next group of competitive players on their next competitive team does seem like it has arrived in the major leagues. And they're actually much more interesting to watch than they were last year. And they do hit left-handed pitching pretty well. So getting the better of the splits, going against Eduardo Rodriguez. And Arizona, similarly, better against righties than they are against lefties. 120 WRC plus against right-handed pitching, fourth on the season, fourth over the past 30 days. So basically no drop in terms of effectiveness. Again, like the left-handed sticks, Carroll, Naylor just perform a little bit better against righties as a unit than they do against left-handed pitching. Both of these bullpens kind of scare me. You know, the Diamondbacks have had significant injuries. Justin Martinez, AJ Puck, I believe they're still without both of those guys. 19th in expected FIP on the season, 15th in strikeout minus walk rate. So a league average bullpen. White Sox, bottom three bullpen, arguably worse than baseball, alongside the Nationals, 30th in expected FIP, 28th in strikeout minus walk rate. And over the past 30 days, both of these teams rank in the bottom 10 by both of those metrics as well. And defensively, too, you know, Arizona is a team who typically is rated a little bit better for me defensively. Gabriel Moreno is a really good defensive catcher. They're 24th in defensive runs saved this year. White Sox are 22nd, and the teams are 13th and 26th, respectively, in outs above average. So bad bullpens, below average defensive units, and both teams in their superior offensive split. And oh, by the way, 93 degrees and 13-mile-an-hour winds. Granted, it's a cross breeze, but 93 degrees in Chicago today. Seems like some good over weather at Rate Field. I'd like the over to 9 minus 108. It has moved up from 8.5 to 9 a couple of times and does get sharp money on the under when it's moved up to the 9. So just keep that in mind. Would try to get a juiced 8.5 as opposed to betting a plus money 9 here, because 9 is the key number. I think it's a decent chance it ends up landing on 9. So the over 8.5, I could take up to minus 125 as opposed to betting the 9 at minus 105, 9 at plus money. But yeah, juiced 8.5 looks good to me here. And again, I would bet it all the way up to 9 at minus 108. I projected it at 9.4.
As you've noted multiple times, it's scorching hot across the country. This
Yeah.
still could be the Weather Channel game of the day in Milwaukee, though. 95 degrees, wind pushing to the left field foul pole. Can you confirm the roof situation in Milwaukee and that potential impact on and over between the Buccos and the Brewers, sitting at 8.5 in the market right now?
Yeah, I'd imagine it'll be closed just because they're able to close it when it is hot there. But the sides of that stadium still remain open, and it doesn't mean that the humidity, the temperature does not impact the game. Even though the dome is technically closed, the roof is closed, the sides of the stadium are still open. And I feel like air, gets in through those concourses a little bit more easily than it does at other parks. A little bit more similar to Lone Depot Park in Miami, which does have like the open sides and the open back, even when they close the roof. So I think temperature does have a little bit more of an impact in these parks than you may expect when the dome is closed, quote unquote. Toronto, Houston, Texas, a little bit more traditional dome closed versus dome open situations with the air blowing through. In Milwaukee, I do think it has an impact. Now, expecting it to be closed, that's fine. The Brewers bullpen is in really bad shape today. They played a just absolute slobber knocker in Milwaukee or in Minnesota yesterday against the Twins. I think there were over 40 hits combined in that game. It was insane. At least like 35 hits combined, 17 runs. But the Brewers pulled their starter early. And I was very happy with Pat Murphy because I had a Brewers money line ticket. And every time one of his guys get in trouble, getting him out of the game. Really was not messing around except with one of his relievers late. I think it might have been DL Hall, who he was just forced to leave in. Jared Koenig got left in for a moment as well. But they had a 9-3 lead. It got to 9-8. They slowly melted it away. The Twins had the go-ahead runner on second base at one point, and they ended up holding the game down. But their bullpen is going to be exhausted today because they used, as I said, 7 relievers on Sunday. Grant Anderson pitched back-to-back days. DL Hall and Nick Mears. Nick Mears is one of their best guys to bring in with runners on base to get out of jams. Hall and Mears have pitched twice in 3 days. Jared Koenig threw nearly 30 pitches on Sunday, and Trevor McGill came in for his first 4-out save of the season. So this Brewers bullpen is completely shot today. I like Chad Patrick, but his body array, his pitch modeling metrics are significantly higher than how he's performed this season. And he is getting hit a little bit in June and showing some regression to the mean. 8 walks, 19 strikeouts in his 3 June starts. He's pitched right around expectations. ERA of around 4, expected FIP of 4.2, strikeout minus walk rate better than the league average. But I do think he's slowing down a little bit, and he has no help behind him. The Brewers really need him to get through 5 innings today, and more runs are scored in the 5th inning, except more runs are scored in the 5th inning compared to every other inning except the 1st inning. And if you're going to force Patrick to go a 3rd time through the order in the 5th inning, I think that's where he gets into trouble. You look at his time through the order splits this season: 690 OPS first time through, 558 second time through, 979 third time through. So I think Patrick gets lit up here in the 4th or 5th inning. I think you could probably live bet this one if it's low scoring early and get an over 8.5. But I like the over 8.5 currently at -115. I projected this total at 9.1. And hopefully the wind or the weather does have some amount of impact today, even with the roof likely being closed. I should mention the Pirates bullpen too. Caleb Ferguson, Dennis Santana, probably 2 of their 3 best relievers, if not their 2 best relievers. They both pitched 3 times in 4 days as well. So the Pirates bullpen should also be a little bit banged up too. And Milwaukee's offense, as I said, they scored a ton of runs on Sunday. They've scored 43 runs in their past 4 games. They've the number 2 offense in terms of WRC plus over the past weeks. You're getting a locked-in Brewers offense with no bullpen help behind their starting pitcher and a weakened Pirates bullpen today. I think all signs kind of point towards the over, aside from that roof potentially being closed. But yeah, over 8.5 up to -115. I don't bet too many overs in this park. I need some major bullpen concerns in order to get there, and I definitely see them today.
You have 2 leans to close out your card here. Under in the NL East matchup between the Mets and the Braves. A little bit surprised here because Paul Blackburn is on the bump and he hasn't made it out of the 4th inning in 3 straight starts. He's given up 10 runs across 8 innings in those 3 starts. So where's your level of concern with him potentially handing the ball off to the bullpen and trying to give them 4 or 5 good innings here?
Yeah, no, that's completely the concern. Is I think Blackburn has blow up potential. 87 degrees, 8-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to left field at Citi Field. And the Mets also hit Schwellenbach a little bit on Sunday, I believe, when they last faced them too. So there's definitely concerns all over this matchup. It's just purely like close to being in range. I make it, I think, 8.3, and the market is at 8.5, and you can get plus money on the under. So it really depends on umpire information. I always talk about this on Monday shows, Tuesday shows. I typically know most of the umpires, at least 50% of them, except for the new matchups that start on Tuesday. Monday, I never know the umpires on Monday morning, basically. So I need umpire information here. If we happen to get a particularly pitcher-friendly umpire, I would consider betting the under. I think it's likelier that we end up passing on this game, especially given the wind and weather factor and the bullpen familiarity with these 2 teams. But, you know, the bullpens, as I talked about with the Pirates game, as I talked about with the Cubs and Cardinals game, where both teams kind of used their lesser relievers on Sunday. The Braves were down against the Marlins. The Mets were down big against the Phillies, and both of these teams kind of used their B bullpens on Sunday and seem to have their A bullpens ready on Monday. But if Paul Blackburn gets knocked out in the 3rd inning, it doesn't matter what bullpen relievers you have behind him. It probably means he's given up 5 or 6 runs already to that point. So yeah, I'll lean to the under, but I need to see umpire information before I fire. And I'd say it's less likely that I fire on this game and more likely that I fire on the other under that I'm watching here.
Yeah, let's get to that last under between Baltimore and Texas. Patrick Corbin has gone from trash to a solid option in the Rangers rotation, although he has struggled with command as of late. Trevor Rogers on the other side of this matchup has been hurt or in the minors for much of the season, and he was really wild in his last start against the Rays. It's scorching hot in the Charm City with wind pushing out, so you're going to need to sell me on this under 9.5.
Yeah, that's another reason why I'm like borderline here. I think our Action Labs weather tracker has this at 96 degrees at first pitch, but I think the real feel is north of 100 degrees, considering the actual heat and humidity and the sun at the time of the game. No significant wind factor, about 5-mile-an-hour cross breeze. But as you said, Rodgers really good in his first start, very shaky in his second start in Tampa. And frankly, I do think the heat and the humidity had something to do with that. And I do worry about him pitching in warmer conditions here. This is a guy who spent most of his career pitching indoors in Miami. You know, now you're putting him outside where he's just going to be less comfortable, have less grip on the ball if his hand is sweaty. So kind of silly things to think about, but I do actually think there is more than just noise there in terms of Trevor Rogers having to get prepared for these games and pitching outdoors as opposed to indoors. So that concerns me. Uh, but, and Corbin, I bet on Corbin quite a number of times this year. I bet on his money line. I bet on his unders. Have had mostly good success with him. I do think guys will start to figure him out a little bit now that he's modified his pitch mix, now that he's seeing the league for a second time. I don't know how many times he's faced the Orioles with this new pitch mix, if he has it all, but um, I do think, this is another game that just is going to come down to the under or the umpire quality for me and what we're going to get out of that because I do make this around 9.25. So 9.5 even money would be a bet for me, assuming umpire checks out as league average. These teams though, and Texas has been one of the best under teams all season. Baltimore has started to hit a little bit more lately than they have in recent weeks, but Adley's banged up right now. And this game fits an Action Lab system for under streak, which is cashed at about it's earned a 5.5% ROI this year, 68, 51, and 4 to the under. And lifetime since 2005, the system has a 53% win rate and a 3.3% ROI. So I lean under, waiting for umpire information. Action Labs has a pretty strong under lean on this game today. Just don't love it given the weather, but yeah, need umpire information before we fire on it. This total big open at 10.5 came down to 10, came down to 9.5, seemed to get bet up a little bit at 9.5 and may end up leveling out at 10. But if it stays at 9.5, I think that's a pretty good indication that the under is the side here because I'd imagine the public is all over the over given the wind and the weather. And I just think it's a little bit too high potentially. And good chance this game ends on 9 between two teams who've struggled to hit.
Question for you, Grant, before you give us your full dinger card here on Monday. Do you see books adjusting to these weather, implications, whether it's winds pushing out or the scorching hot heat, or do you feel like they lag a little bit in catching up to this as one of the hottest days across Major League Baseball this season?
They tend to be pretty on top of things. I mean, you have some outlier scenarios. I mean, you just mentioned the Texas Baltimore game. That's one where we've seen it multiple times this season where they haven't really caught on to good hitting weather where there's wind blowing out and high temperatures, and they just have completely missed on pricing home runs. And I've seen it 3 or 4 times already this season where in this particular ballpark, they just entirely miss what's going on. And I don't know why that is, but we're taking advantage of that today. So let's just get right into the parlay here. Over on DK, you have a no sweat bet. I'm using a 3-leg parlay, 164 to 1 odds. First leg, Ketel Marte plus 380. Marte has been fantastic this season, having a career year, 13 home runs in 51 games, 15% barrel rate, by far the highest of his career. Matchup versus Shane Smith. Shane Smith has not allowed a ton of bombs this season, but home run to fly ball rate sitting at just 5% against lefties so far this season. Going to regress at some point. Grades out as an average to slightly above average matchup for lefty power. We already mentioned the weather today, 92 to 95 degrees in that game. Crossing winds, which crossing right to left is not going to help lefties that much, but still should not hurt them too much. So high temperatures is really what matters here, and the ball should be flying. Marte plus 380 is just too high of odds. Next up, Wyatt Langford in that Baltimore game, plus 500. You can get it plus 525 over at MGM or Bet365, but I want him for the Snow Sweat token, so I'm taking him plus 500. Gets a matchup versus Rogers. Rogers has not allowed I think any home runs so far this season, but there's no reason to believe that's going to continue overall in his career, giving up around a 1.1 home run per nine to righties, despite playing in a very pitcher-friendly ballpark his entire career. Look at the fly ball rate, around 37%, hard contact rate around 35% against righties so far in his career. So grades out as a above average matchup for righty power, 98 to 100 degrees during this game. No real winds, but a decent amount of humidity. Ball should be flying today in a ballpark upgrade for Langford. Plus 500 is far too high odds, and if you can get it for plus 525, even better. Last up, Marcelo Zuna plus 475 today. Again, another good weather game. 9 miles an hour wind blowing out, 85 to 87 degrees during game time. Matchup versus Blackburn, we already talked about him. Rashawn already talked about him. Has been bad in recent games. Hasn't given up too many bombs this year, but you look at his historical numbers, 1.42 home runs per nine, two righties in his career, and that's playing in one of the best ballparks in the league for pitchers. So maybe in for some regression there. In any case, grades out as a well above average match for righty power. Ozuna has not been great this year. The underlying numbers are not as great as they have been the last 2 years when he was hitting 39, 40 bombs, but he still has plenty of power. And given the matchup, the positive hitting conditions, weather, everything, plus 475 is far too high. So parlay them all together, 164 to 1 odds over on DK. Use that no sweat token. Worst case scenario, you get a bonus bet back.
That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of the bets that you heard from Grant or Sean in today's episode, look for the quick slip links in the episode description. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the pod. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Also, check out the Action Network Discord. There's a link in the episode description of this podcast. We'll be back tomorrow for more Major League Baseball best bets. For Sean Zerillo and Grant Neiffer, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.